name's Glyn Pooley, and I'd like to talk about art. This time, my subject is
the art of Joan Eardley, who is a fantastic artist on so many levels. Not got the recognition yet that she totally deserves, although she is well known, of course, and that's due, unfortunately, to a relatively short life, as you can see, to 1921 to 1963. She's a Scottish artist. Well, she's known as a Scottish artist, of course, because she worked primarily in Scotland, but she was born in Wareham in Sussex. Father was a captain in the army in the First World War, but her mother was originally from Scotland, and they met when he was up in Glasgow. She had a really intense life, I think we could say. As an artist, she is absolutely celebrated by other artists. So she's an artist, mainly because the deep contact that she made with her subject matter. But she's appreciated and much loved by a whole range of people for her work. And I think she's relatively straightforward to understand in terms of a collective body of work. There's so many subtleties to it. Just little photographs, these photographs, you can see her working in a studio in the Town's Head region of Glasgow and studying the children of the area, which was one of her main subject matters, as was the northeast of Scotland. She moved from Wareham because her parents had a dairy farm, and unfortunately, because her father got gassed in the First World War, and he suffered with depression all his life, and then he left the family. He died when Joan was about 8, I think. So her and her mother moved to the central London with an aunt, and then that Joan was brought up by her mum and her aunts. But then she went to a private school and had the opportunity, paid for by her aunt, to go to she ended up in Goldsmiths in London. So her talent was early spotted, but she only did a couple of years there because, of course, the Second World War came along, and she left and went up to Scotland then to escape. It's interesting to see some of these early pictures. You can see a fantastic draftsmanship with the study of the lady knitting there, and it's very bold and direct, and she's very confident with her mark making. This early picture, 48, made just after Joan had finished course at the Glasgow School of Art. She went over to do a commission for a friend in Lincoln of a mural, and she made this picture on the return. Quite a large work, but all the essences of a worker contained in it. An amazing psychological study of the main figure, but all these lovely little details. The captures of the pictures, the clock, the humour is there with the red wallpaper, hence the title, and you really get a sense of atmosphere, directness. It's an expressionist painting, colour intensity, colour saturation in it. So this was a noted work that she had after she left college. She did win a couple of prizes while she was in the Glasgow School of Art, which enabled her to go on a travel scholarship. She went to Italy and she went to France, but in Italy she got to study, she went to Florence and she got to study the paintings of people like Giotto, and she went to Venice as well. But it was interesting, even when she was in Venice, she wasn't painting the beauty of the buildings or the lights or anything like that. She studied the ordinary people, the beggars in Venice, and she was always about giving a voice to those people who mainly weren't really receiving one. But in this picture, you can see that her classical painting training is there, but it's got a real kind of there's a directness, there's a heaviness. There's an intensity to it. Obviously, the draftsmanship is all there. Some amazing details to it when you really look at it. You look at this leg, the shin is just sinking into that mattress. So really accurately observed. But she was also well aware of the other art movements, of course, that were going on. And these primary colours on the right hand side, the yellow, blues, and the reds, there's a complement to it. They're a kind of nod to Mondrian and people like that. So she was interested in modernist art, whether it be people like Mondrian or the abstract expressionists in America as well, people like de Kooning. So she only made one or two figures like this, and a woman painted a male nude in Glasgow caught quite a lot of attention in the press and things like that at the time. So she had to have a minder for a while. It's hard to believe now, isn't it? This is basically, then we move into a first love of painting, which is Glasgow area, Glasgow townships, at a time where she's trying to portray a period of community that was there that was fast starting to disappear. But it's lovely to see the way she goes out and collects that information. These amazing sketches from the sketchbook with the references, so the colours are noted in the book or any specific detail. And then she works a lot, primarily gathering information in pastel and charcoal for the immediacy of it, but she's got a very sensitive touch. There's a free-flowing quality about her work that just engages on a lot of levels, because you can kind of investigate it and see things within the picture format. So these studies of the tenement townships that were, they were the slums really of the area, which were, as time went on, they all got taken away and knocked down. But they also fostered an amazing life for the community that were in them, particularly with the children, getting together, playing out in those areas, making their own fun. There's a kind of real honesty that she manages to get. And this is interesting to see how directly, again, she's caught this image, this building, with the charcoal and the pastel. And, sometimes we always talk about not getting limited by your space or the support you're working on. You can see how she's just tacked another piece of paper onto the end there and just joined them up, and almost joined them up in a kind of abstract way as well, where they don't quite meet up, but it works as a whole. And it's that directness of observation and deep absorption in the subject that really makes her art very, very powerful. So these are a couple of photographs at the time, after the Second World War, end of the 40s and into the 50s. Quite a few photographers would go up to that area because they could see it was a disappearing kind of time and place. It's quite a famous picture on the left. But it's interesting to see how the children in these places are decorating and using their canvas as the walls in their buildings as their canvas. And she kind of incorporates that into her painting, because it's all about creativity and making the fun for yourself, of course, and these kind of difficult circumstances. And I think mainly what Joan did have is a real deep connection with the children of that area. I suppose that's an openness and honesty she had in her. That empathy for, like I said, those that don't have such a strong voice. I think it was also because she never had children herself. She'd always struggled with certain elements. You get these with these artists who are, what can we say, expressionist artists. So, she struggled with depression and things like this. It's about intensity of really observing. She really knew and deeply connected with humanity, but sometimes there's a price to pay for that. So by being with children and working with children, I think their lightness, their playfulness, their honesty and openness really did something really positive for her. And then she could pass that back to the community through the paintings she made. Andrew would comment, what amazing artwork. And so expressionistic, but we can still read everything that we see. Suggested details in the comic, what he's eating. Everything's quite tonal in these earlier pictures, range of greys and blues, but then she's picked up, a couple of primary colours as she did in that drawing. But you know, you're lost in that child's observation and that face and the intensity. You know, he's there eating an orange. There's real joy there as well. Amazing artwork. And this is another one, obviously. All the textures that are appearing around, the roughness of the texture, which reflect the black and white photograph that we saw. So they are of its place and of its time, but you know, that extra bit of color, use of that pink there, has got a psychological impact which lifts the whole picture. Touch of blue or touch of yellow, touch of red. It's all so instinctive. That's something that's very difficult to do. You have to be that artist to be able to do things like that. That's why other artists appreciate it so much. She's an abstract artist when you look at it in this case, and these are lots of abstract shapes, but she never went into pure abstraction as was the trend at those particular times. Because she never went totally into abstraction, that's why her appeal has kind of remained, because her works are accessible, because you can read them, you can see the figuration, you can see the figure, you can read the psychological impact on the face, and then you can enjoy, if you like, the abstract qualities of the shapes and the colors, which just jump out at you, sing out to you often in the piece. Some more photographs of a particular family that Joan connected with, the Sampson family. She made lots of pictures of these children. They were a very large family. I think there's a small selection there. I think it was about 12 or 14 of them in the family. Who's documenting that area and the time disappearing. They make a portrait in Joan's studio of the children looking quite happy, more or less, smiling, and it's a traditional kind of representation. Whereas Joan obviously goes deep below the surface and tries to capture something else. Those beautiful colours, again, those pinks and reds are coming out. Psychological quality of the faces, beautiful picture of the baby sleeping there. Again, wonderful, wonderful colours. But thoughts are going on below the surface, as always. And this is some of the Sampson family. You can now see how, as well as the individual portraiture that she's combining, we've got the documentation of the area, the chalk drawings and things on the walls as well, a reflection of the family, the specifics. And she also spent quite a bit of time taking black and white photographs of the area herself as well, just to use as recording devices, specific positioning or portraiture. In terms of, although we saw in the first image that the children were coming in and out of the studio and she revelled in them being there, to try and draw or paint a child that's constantly moving at times can be a bit of a challenge. So to have some black and white reference photographs as well of the area and the children just enables us to document the whole thing a lot more deeply. It's lovely to see her working methods. These were probably never meant to be exhibited. These are working drawings, but they're fabulous in their own right, because you can see how she recorded the different individuals, you know, whether it be from the choice of the surface as she's working on, the colour of it, use of the charcoal to outline it, the bold use of pastels combined, the free-flowing line, you know, and in those studies. And in the right-hand side, you've got those elements, which are then added to with collage. So you've got collage building layer upon layer into the picture, as well as the charcoal and the oils, just making these pictures just really sing out. There's just a kind of real sensitivity. Girl with a Squint, this one's called, as you can see there. But it's just a melody of colours that she uses. They are, you can't see them in musical terms. There's such harmony between the backgrounds and the main figure, the way the colours go onto the main figure. Just the harmony of the use of the collage, the colour of it, the tone is reflected in the paint down here, exactly the same colour. And it's just a way of guiding the viewer right around constantly the picture, so they never leave it. And there's always something interesting to find, whether it be a beautiful texture or a beautiful tone or a beautiful colour. It's all in it. That enables us to connect deeply with the subject matter. You know, the thought of this was, I saw the black and white reference photograph to this, but what she's done, she's transformed it into these beautiful blue colours, as the main kind of theme which runs through the whole picture. And you just see that blue just appear right the way around and take us on a cyclical journey. As we said, the red takes us to the center again, warm colours take us there. But look at the eyes and that. There's nothing much. They're just one or two little marks, but everything is in them. And you can only really achieve that with a real deep sensitivity and empathy. And I suppose real love for the subject matter. She'd had a deep love for these children. In some part of her soul was part of them in so many ways. And that kind of comes across. And some of these works were quite large as well. It's a couple more of her immediate studies again. The characters on their faces sometimes, they're so individualistic, but she's just caught them. But they're beautiful, sat there crossed arms. What do you think you're doing, Others just sit there, yeah, okay, carry on, you can paint me, I don't mind, And others are just magical. Colour, that blue is just wonderful. There's just, the marks are on there and they're just subtly placed, but everything is just there or suggested. Look at the hands, there's no fingers or anything there, but that's just given the suggestion of moving hands. There's a lot of movement going on. Like a little cloud of colour is enough to get it. And then the specifics, the toughlessness of the child, the look on the eye. Maybe some of the children did have bad eyesight and all kinds of things. These were difficult times. These were difficult places to live. Some of the children, of course, wouldn't be in the best of health, of course, and all those kinds of things. But she's given them a light and a life. It's just incredible. She caught the way they play in and their games and drawing. This is a gouache painting. The boldness of the gouache with a little bit of chalk in it, mixed media again. These are immediate mediums so she can capture something deep in the moment. But everything is anatomically correct, and that would have been her training in Glasgow, etc. That it's just capturing the essence of everything. The yellow jumper. Some of these this is like a large oil painting now, and she's using even more combinations of mediums on the canvas. We've got the oil. If you take that centre part with this abstract quality, that could almost look like a Willem de Kooning painting, the American abstract expressionist. She just transcends that in lots of ways as well because of the extra layering. Some people would say it's conservative. I don't think so. I think it's more progressive than that because as well as that quality, she's used the use of collage again. She's now used like stencils. She's etched into the oil paint surface there to show you the painting underneath that red coming through. You've got all the expressionist marks of her brushstrokes are all there. We get the psychological impact of the figures, and we get the emotional impact of that deep rusty red around it. So there's so many layers to it. We can only capture a tiny bit on the screen here. Imagine if you were stood in front of it, you get all the light bouncing off all those surfaces, and the whole thing would become even more alive. Incredible picture. As is this one, Children and Chalked Wall. She said, as you can see, number 3, she did a number of these, and you can see the coloration that we saw previously with those warm greys and some primary colours. Beautiful pair of children there holding hands and camaraderie, but with specific details of the time and place. She's got silver foil there, gold foil. This is joy, this is the kind of playful things that children might use and have around them as well. References, time and newspaper, building up with certain words, documenting a time and a place, a specific time and a place that was transforming, that was going, all being laid on in layer upon layer through the medium and format of children in the community. And then this is the other side of Joan, as well as working in the Glasgow townships, probably as a way of kind of regathering herself. She went up to the northeast of Scotland, just below Aberdeen, to a place called Cataline on the coast. And she worked on these amazing set of large canvases. Not canvases, well, some were canvases, but others were board, a bit more sturdy. And some was really large. That's what's incredible. some were like 6 foot across. She would just love to go out into storms, set these things up, and make these incredible seascapes. She'd take them up on her lambretta, get out to the point, and then go for it. Very tough and immediate, incredible. The earlier ones was the fisherman's nets, the drying salmon's nets here. She did a whole series of these, and you can see the same technique with the children, the textures, the layering, all being shown in this. The atmosphere, the emotion, the deep connection with the ruggedness and the roughness of the landscape, all just being laid out. And like I said, some of these were really quite large canvas, and you'd really appreciate those textures when you're in front of them. And she did so many pictures, a whole series of large paintings of the sea, just being front on with it, just engaging with it deeply, emotively, putting that oil paint on to try and get below the surface of what she was experiencing. And she didn't move around that much when she was up there. She just got to one point specifically and just went over and over and over and tried to get more and more and more out of that experience of being in that particular place. Imagine all that storms going on and everything. That's why these pictures have been compared to some of Turner's pictures when he was strapped to the top of that mast of a ship, painted some of his later works. It's about deep connection with all your senses being open to being able to take in absorb everything that's in front of you, and then get that back out onto the canvas. You can share at least an element of the massiveness of being in those particular places. Often, you see these beautifully finished paintings of landscapes, and maybe in a classical style. They might have a big vista of a sea, a big vista of a sky, and you think, yeah, you've caught something. But then you go out into that particular place or a similar place and look at the sky and the sea, and the vastness just overwhelms you because, nature is incredibly intense and immense. So it's those kind of qualities that she's trying to get back into the paint. It's very visceral. It's just kind of almost big, thick areas of impasto paint have gone on there to try and use every little nuance of her being to get the right kind of shape, tone, and form and texture on that surface. And then the psychological impacts of that just come through on it. The weight of the color, whether it's deep emotion of that particular place, the expressive quality of it, those lovely pinks and blues and reds again in amongst the foil of the greys and the warms, all there. Not pretty landscapes, pretty, but real, deeply connected landscapes. That takes some doing to really open yourself up enough to be able to paint like this. I think that's why, as you said, artists really appreciate it. To be able to stand in that storm with all that going on and get something like this down, where the sea is crashing on the shore there, and it's landing where the spray is being sprayed over everything, and she's getting the atmosphere of the spray. She's capturing, a bit of light on a building in the background, the heaviness of the storm coming through, the glow of the sand in the foreground. All these things are just being put together in one particular scene, large picture as well. Incredible. And as well as those stormy pictures of the sea, being out in front of the sea, she also looked in the other direction, and you've got the fields around there as well, around the little cottage that she had. Eventually she bought a couple of cottages to store her work and then live. They were very basic places, buildings that she was living in while she was there. No running water, no electric light, nothing like that. It was really back to the land basics, but she could just be totally absorbed in the landscape. So she turned around and she painted the fields as well as the enormity of the sky. So you get this wonderful light that's being caught in this piece, wonderful yellows and blues and whites, brought out by the wonderful red-brown contrast of the landscape there. But again, the energy, the swirl, the movement of the place is all alive. If you're in those situations with the power of the sea all around you. How do you capture it? This is how you kind of get some way of capturing it. You become like the sea in the way you put the marks on, if you like. The swirl of the waves are going on, how the sea would have been moving, clouds would have been moving. You put the brush marks on in the way that was moving, and you really feel every nuance of the experience. And that's what she's trying to do here with it. And this one, flood tide, you get the movement of the water from those brush marks sweeping over the surface. You get the spray by the different kind of texture on those brush marks as well. You get the harmony use of her colours with those, grey as the base, warm grey as the base, but then these blues, primary colours, and the yellows and the reds just appearing in it, all to lift up the whole experience, and even showing some of the canvas through in that one. But it's a total body experience when you're making paintings like this. It just makes you want to get out there and give it a go, doesn't it? And just be in amongst it and just try it. I wonder how many of her boards and canvases went flying off in the storm, and she had to go chase it up the beach and get it back down there, put it back on her easel, tie it down, and then get on with it. It's very physical kind of work to be able to do that. Amazing. As well as a counterpart, this is a later work now. She also made some interior flower pictures, but they're not ordinary, genteel flower documented pictures. Of course, they are emotive pieces again, where she connects with the essence of the growth of the flower and her personal experience and connection with it. We get these wonderful, strong colours coming through. We get those real direct brush marks there. So the whole thing is alive and animate, as we've seen when we looked at Native American work and the Aboriginals and stuff. Everything has a life force, and with Joan, you see the life force in everything that she paints. It's in evidence. The vase itself, it's not sitting gently on a surface. It's almost like floating, it's vibrating in space. It has its own force, it has its own characteristics. She was sensitive enough to be able to connect animate quality in inanimate objects. And that's what you get to see in her paintings. You get to see their vibrancy. Oh, they just kind of lift you in so many ways. And then there's a couple of ones of the fields around the little cottage that she was working in. A lovely melody in blue here. Study of the different flowers, movement, flow, energy, all there again. Lovely kind of element of the transition of the lovely greens and the blues. Contrast from the darks to the lights to give, a real sense of depth in the piece. Every mark that's gone there is like, imagine the wind on that coast blowing these flowers to the left and to the right, and they're dancing from left to right, and she's putting those marks in as they move from left to right or up and down, and that's what it comes across in it. So the whole thing becomes alive and vibrant and just so visceral. And this one with the summer fields, she had collage, as we saw in the children's pictures. You've got collage here because, as well as the oil painting here, she actually took parts of corn that was in the fields and she attached it to the canvas. She stuck it there as well because she was creating a pattern that was living. It was alive. So anything that was around her, that was going onto the surface if it became necessary for it. And all that energy is there. Movement, light is there, structure's there, the passion, the deep passion for a pattern is there. And she's left an amazing legacy.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell notification.